or they try to.
Brothers and sisters, may the peace that can only come from the one God be upon you. We are here to tell the people that we hear you. One God will not allow us as people of conscience to lose our morale.
Powered by our patrons. Welcome to a special episode of You Call That Radio. We have the legend John Robb in the house. Well, he's not actually in a house, but more on that later. Just want to say before we go any further, thanks to everyone who supported the GoFundMe and my birthday surprise. I was speechless at the time. I'm still a bit speechless about it. But today I was looking at computers and cameras to sort of get things evolved and upgraded. And just want to say thank you one more time. Really appreciate it. We've got John Taylor saying Major Coup. Amazing. John Robb is a legend. Peter Bentham says top man, John. The captain says late. Is the show cancelled? No, just running a wee bit late. Happy be elated birthday, says Petra. Thank you very much, Petra. It's time to bring on our special guest, John Robb. Absolute legend in the music scene as a musician, as an author, as a journalist, as a social commentator. Let's all give him a round of applause. And everyone hit the share button and give him a round of applause.
You call that radio?
Fucking radio. Here to tell the people that we hear you. One God will not allow.
You call that radio.
However you want to say it.
You call that radio?
You call that radio.
However you want to say it, that's kind of part of the fun.
Powered by our patrons.
Brothers and sisters.
We are indeed powered by our Patreon. Shouts to all the patrons who support the show. Also, if you're watching this on Facebook, then I would highly advise that you switch to YouTube. We're on youtube.com/you call that radio. Just looks and sounds a bit better over there. And we're also on Twitch. It looks a bit better and sounds a bit better over there as well. But it gives me a great pleasure to introduce tonight's special guest, the legendary John Robb. How you doing, man?
I'm okay, yeah, just wandering around Manchester. It's not raining. Where am I?
Mate, it's rained in Glasgow every day since, I think, Saturday. It was not even every day, just every minute of every day. I was out in the sunshine on a hill in Loch Lomond Way, and it was 27 degrees. It was beautiful, a bit too hot. And by the time we got to the bottom of the hill, it was torrential rain, and it's been like that ever since. But I've been to Manchester. I love Manchester, man. It's I've played gigs in Manchester. Salford has always been really welcoming to us. So it's a great city, and it's good to see outside at all, because I've pretty much been in this room since March. So
yeah, no.
Can you give us a wee tour? Where are you now? What can we see?
If you go 2 blocks over there, you find what used to be the Hacienda. Over there, that way is Oxford Road. I mean, if you haven't been to Manchester for years, you wouldn't recognise it. It's all massive towers now. It looks like New York these days. It's a very different city. I wish I spoke to you 20 minutes ago, because I was by the boardwalk and all those venues, so I could give you some music stories. You know, where Oasis used to rehearse when they started, and we used to rehearse next door to them when they were just starting off. When they used to rehearse I'm the Walrus for about 5 hours a day.
Did you know? Did you at the very start when we were playing "I Am the Walrus"? Did you know that Oasis were going to make it?
I was confident that Noel had the talent to make it because he'd already given me the first demo, and I knew, and he also had the discipline to make it because he worked the rest of the band really hard. And also, I wanted him to make it because he was a friend of mine. He used to go to all the gigs around town. He always calls it the Manchester 50, the 50 people you see at every single gig in that period between about, 86 and 90. I can't remember the exact years, really early days. And he was like the youngest one. So he'd be about 17 or 18, and I was about 29, 30 then. But he was like, he knew more about music than any other kid I'd ever met. So at that time, no one knew anything about the Beatles. It's really hard to believe now, but the Beatles are totally out of fashion in that period. But he knew everything about them. He knew lots of British glam rock stuff from the 70s, which nowadays is not an unusual conversation because everybody, because of Spotify and the internet, knows everything about music. But then it was unusual to meet somebody of his age who knew music in that amount of detail. So I knew he knew his stuff. But the thing is, the Rosies had already done their thing, and it seemed quite hard to work out how another band could get through and get big. So because they kind of arrived just after the Manchester thing, just after the bus had left town, but they were so good they made it, didn't they? I mean, I remember going to the early gigs, and you could tell they had something. I used to think it's a shame there's no scene left for them to get big in. But I think a great band up to about 15 years ago could change the scene to its own terms, couldn't it? Which you can't do now, can it? It's changed again, hasn't it?
Absolutely, and especially now since lockdown, it's now there's just nobody knows what's going on.
No, it's chaos. I mean, we're back in a lockdown. We're a semi-lockdown now, where we can't go and this is weird. If you want to go and see your mum, you can't sit in the garden with her, but you could take her to the pub next door and sit in the really packed beer garden with her.
Or take her to a restaurant and get a tenner off.
Well, the big joke in Manchester is you're allowed to go anywhere as long as you pay to get in, or it's got a cash machine.
As long as there's a till, in the area.
Yeah, that's basically what they do.
Well, in Scotland, we were doing quite well.
I'll do what we need to do to stop the virus. I don't mind putting a face mask on. I don't care. If it stops other people getting ill, even if you don't know or whatever, that's all right. We've got to look after each other and all those kind of things. But I wish the information was a bit more consistent, really.
Well, it's almost like the Tories might be incompetent.
No, not only are they selfish and ruthless, they're totally incompetent, which is mad. I mean, this always makes me laugh that people who run capitalism are terrible capitalists. You think if they want to make loads of money, why don't they just run things a little bit better? Treat people a bit more respect and make them want to make money for them. They're not even very good at what they're trying to do, which is the joke, isn't it? But you'll be independent soon. It won't be your problems. We'll be stuck with them.
Well, Scotland's been doing okay with the virus, but Aberdeen's just had a lockdown. Obviously, we opened the pubs about a week later, so that's Aberdeen just been went into lockdown as of today.
Well, yeah, that's how it's going to be. I think for the next 10 years, there will be micro lockdowns. There's unless the vaccine works. And I'm fairly confident the Oxford vaccine will work, but it'll still take a couple of years for it to go through the whole of the population. But we're going to be in this thing where you'll be getting a train, get a train to London, and halfway there, the train will stop and you have to go home because you can't go to London because they lock you down again. I mean, we're going to have to put up all that crap. I mean, it's a virus, isn't it? There's no conspiracy theory. It's just it's a horrible, annoying virus, isn't it? Like every century there's a virus, and we just happen to be around for this one. I mean, the Spanish flu was worse, so we're lucky if we're going to have a pandemic. It's one that's slightly worse than the last one. Slightly not as worse as the last one.
Well, I suppose the difference is that back when the Spanish flu was happening, there was a lot less people travelling around for their work or touring and stuff like that. So the disruption this time round is incredible, especially for musicians who are touring. Because they're even talking about even small independent bands that would be touring around the UK. How do you plan for a mini lockdown just suddenly popping up?
You have to work around it. I mean, as somebody who's in a band, I would take that as part of touring. You don't want it to happen. You don't want it to happen to you. You don't want it to happen to the venue. You don't want it to happen for the audience. But it is one of those things like when you're touring, even in the pre-virus times, you could be going to a gig. I mean, I've toured in America where a tornado shut a venue and we were 400 miles out and you just have to go to a motel and take the night off. You know what I mean? You know, you will get your plague of frogs. I mean, that's touring is like that. Touring's like being in a pirate ship. You know, you might not get to land. There might be a storm or something. I mean, that's part of the attraction of it, I suppose. I mean, I wish there wasn't a virus, of course, and it's a lot worse for other people than bands. But it's never easy touring. There's always things that go wrong all the time. And the Spanish flu, actually, there was a lot more travel because the Spanish flu was spread by the First World War. Because the thing about the Spanish flu is, which I don't like telling you, is it started in America. And the Americans brought it into Europe when they came into the First World War in 1918. So there was mass travel. There's millions of people moving around the world fighting in a war. And that's what spread it. I mean, obviously, right now, I mean, everyone moves around quicker because of air travel. Things get. I mean, it's amazing how fast that virus got around the world. It took it about 2 weeks once it got going, didn't it?
Yeah, it's with regards to lockdown, you've obviously been keeping busy. I've been really enjoying your lockdown interviews and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it's been good. I mean, this is the weird thing. I mean, out of all crisis and all disaster, there's always upsides. Bizarrely, you know, like in the Second World War, they invented stuff that made our lives better. But I wish why can't they do it without killing millions of people? But the thing was, all that stuff like Zoom, unlike what we're using now, this is coming in anyway. But now, because of this, it's the only way we could do this stuff, and it's sped everything up. So what would have been 5 years in the future is now. And this would have been inconceivable, wouldn't it? 25 years ago, I'd have to stand in a call box putting 10p's in while we tried to do this interview, while it kept breaking, and you smelt a piss and somebody's banging on the door. Whereas now I can sit here on the mobile phone and I could be anywhere in the world and we could do this interview, and it's quite amazing, isn't it? And I can see you can see me, the quality's pretty good, and suddenly it makes the whole interview situation, it's not just an interview anymore, it's like doing a live TV. I mean, the quality of the camera in this is HD, so that the image that you were seeing of me is as good as what you would have got on the BBC News 2 years ago. And this is an amazing jump of technology, which has been forced onto us by the situation that we're in. So, like, when we get out the situation at the side, life will be different. Some things will be worse, and some things will be better, won't they? So I would take advantage of it, doing loads of interviews, because basically everyone's sat at home really bored. So the people you kind of know slightly, like the brilliant one of your lot, a brilliant Scottish writer, Ian Rankin, who does the Rebus books. He's done about 3 interviews for me during lockdown, because he's basically, well, he's writing his books all day, but he's got nothing else to do. So you can get for half an hour and he'll give you an absolutely brilliant interview, you know, because people are bored, you know, people sat around and they're just looking for someone to talk to. And the first time I interviewed him was about 4 weeks into the lockdown. And he said, apart from his wife, he hadn't spoken to another human being.
Yeah, and I also I totally agree with the fact that the technological advances, the skills people have learned during lockdown, there's been lots of people who normally take nothing to do with production, learning software, getting recording setups. I'd never done a video call in my life, not even one video call in my entire life, because I just thought it was weird, but I was kind of forced into doing something. So now I think everybody accepts it. This is a way to do things. So in the future, why should we have to, if you're having a half an hour meeting with someone, why should you have to go on a train to meet someone for half an hour when you can just have a video call? And that would have been weird up until February.
Yeah, no, I always used to say that to people, you know. I mean, I like travel, I've no problem with it, but if we have to have a meeting or something, like before I said to people, why don't we do Skype? And the Skype is a bit ratty, but people wouldn't do it. You still have to go and meet them, especially people in London who like making you go to meet them in London. But you don't have to do that anymore. You don't even have to be in a city now. It's all changed, you know. The whole structure of cities is getting massive difference. You look around here, there's all these massive new buildings getting built, and they will still get built, and people still live here, but people won't work here anymore. I mean, a lot of people are manual workers, and that's another great thing about the virus. It's proved that the manual workers are really important. You know, people used to look down on people stacking shelves of shops or bus drivers. Well, I never did, because I'm kind of old school. I'm an old school lefty who believes that everybody's equal in the society. It's like, if, you know, like the bees all died, like Bez's bees. If the bees all died, we'd all wipe out. So like the most humble cog in the machine holds it all together. So whether you're cleaning the toilets or you're stacking shelves or you're selling out a stadium, they're just great. They're all important roles in society. There's no hierarchy. That's me. I know it's old fashioned, but I still believe in that crap.
Well, no, absolutely no.
The cities will change because a lot of people can work from home now if you're not doing manual work. So the people who people in my world, creative world, like writers and musicians, you're doing most of it sat in your bedroom, and that's going to change the nature of city centres. The city centres won't be full of offices; they'll become residential, and they'll be like suburbs with 40-story flats in them. So there'll be shops in local shops. It won't be chain stores because everyone's going to Amazon, etc. City centre will be different. They may be better. It may be, because I love city centres. I love the density of them. But then all the crap bits may go. You don't have to spend 4 hours a day commuting. I mean, surely everybody wants that, don't they?
Well, this one thing I love Glasgow City with all my heart,
I love it.
and I love living here. Have done for many years. But when lockdown happened, you're like looking enviously on at your friends who live in the countryside with a garden and stuff like that, because they won. They won because Glasgow, the good thing about Glasgow is we've got all the we've got amazing live music scene, restaurants, pubs, all that stuff. But when all that's taken away, you're like, a garden would be nice, countryside would be nice.
Well, that's the thing,
I think there'll be a few people fleeing to the countryside as well, probably, if they can afford it.
I think that's happening. There's already a drift out of cities for older people. I mean, I like the city and I like the city centre and that. But the reasons I live here, because of the gigs and the nightlife and that probably won't be here for a couple of years. It's going to be hard to get venues going again, unless the vaccine works, and it works very quickly. It's going to be quite a long time. And also getting people confident to go back out again is going to be another thing. I think it's going to have profound changes on our culture and our societies.
And even the people that go out, that are confident about going out, the whole part of a gig is to get close together, get sweaty, jump around a mosh pit and stuff like that. So even people that are confident about going to a gig might be a wee bit like, get off me, staying away from the hugs, things like that.
It could make people really introverted. I was thinking that the other day, when I was growing up, men would never hug each other. They wouldn't even shake hands because, whoa, watch it, you'd be like that, And then after Acid House, when everyone took ecstasy, men could touch each other, but it wasn't considered like, whoa, what do you think you're doing kind of thing. It was just like people started hugging. And we finally learned to actually be like women are, like more tactile, which is very, very un-British, wasn't it? When you're growing up. And then we've managed to work that one out, and then the sodding virus comes along, and we can't even shake hands now. We have to tap our elbows and stand 2 meters apart. So we're going back to what we were like in the 70s again.
Maybe they should put a bit of MDMA in the vaccine.
I know, well, that would be good. I think you'll find that nobody would be anti-vaccine then, would they?
Or even if they were, they would soon grow out of that eventually. I've got with regards to hold on, a couple of comments quickly. John Taylor says, big fan of your stuff, John, particularly your written work. Delighted to see you here on YCTR.
Yeah. Oh well, thanks, mate. Thank you. Yeah.
The captain is correcting me. The Salford isn't Manchester separate city. I'm aware of that. I think if you rewind this and listen back, what I said is that I love you're in Manchester and I love Manchester as a city. But without saying I love Manchester, I had to point out that I also love Salford as well, because Salford, which is a different place.
It's yes. I mean, I'm not actually from Manchester, so I'm from Blackpool originally. So I'm from the real north. So I could be neutral on this, and I think if you lived in the middle of China, this would all be Manchester. You wouldn't know there was a difference between them. But culturally, Salford is very different. It's got its own accent. They say instead of bottle with a T, they say with a K, buckle, little buckle, and hospital. It's an amazing accent, and they've kept that. And culturally, it's quite different. But really, if you looked at it from outer space, it looks like the same place. So it's I like to think of it as Salford as being an independent city inside Manchester.
Well, so Salford, you've obviously literally wrote the book on it and stuff like that. So I couldn't believe the first time I went to Salford, for its population, when I went on Wikipedia and was looking at all the bands from Salford, it's a who's who of British culture, really, isn't it?
Well, I mean, if you've got Happy Mondays, you're already winning, aren't you? So it's a pretty good start, isn't it? And so it's got a great. There's a great list, but all the northwest, across the northwest. You know, I mean, a lot of the bands that people think are from Manchester, from outside Manchester, you know, like Ian Curtis is from Macclesfield, which is 18 miles away, but ostensibly, really, culturally, it feels like Manchester. You know, it's like Glasgow bands. They don't all come from the inner circle of Glasgow. A lot of them come from the Buckfast Triangle, don't they? Teenage Fan Club or BMX Bandits and all those great bands. All the others right across the other side of the city, like I'm going to say it wrong because I never pronounce it right, but Greenock, where that fantastic band Whiteout came from. Remember them? You know, that the band that should have made it years ago, who toured with Oasis. You know, so Glasgow's, it's like Manchester. It's big and it's got surrounding satellite towns and areas which all have their own identity. But really, at the end of the day, you have to give it one name because it's easier than trying to describe 38 different towns. You just call it Glasgow. The thing I like to mention here is also that great relationship that Manchester and Glasgow have. Don't you think it's amazing? You know, the way Manchester bands are so loved in Glasgow, aren't they? You know, I went to the Rosies' first gig at Glasgow Green, and I never felt an atmosphere like that. It's intense in there, you know. You know, Rob brings quite a few Manchester gigs there, and they still have the Manchester Nights there, and I think that's really appreciated here. I think the two cities have a very similar outlook. You know, they're quite tough cities, but also very sentimental at heart. You know. People, you know, they don't back down for the fight, but they look after people, you know, and also they're creative despite everything. You know, they're not spoilt cities, but they make great art, and Glasgow makes amazing art right across the board. You know, like from Rennie McIntosh to so it's music culture, it's indie culture. I think they're very similar in a way, and they've always had this kind of weird symbiotic relationship, and we've always really appreciated Glasgow bands here. So when a band like Mogwai plays in Manchester, it's really appreciated, you know. We like that tough art. Yeah.
Glasgow, every time I go down to Manchester, I'm always made to feel welcome. And it does remind me of Glasgow. The cities are similar, and the way that the bands act as well. There's a good working class scene. And just talking about Stuart Braithwaite there from Mogwai, because I know that I really enjoyed the interview I watched that the other day where you got him on one of your lockdown interviews, and such an intelligent guy, and the amount of music that they've made over the years is incredible.
He's really smart, but you know, he's really open-minded. So I always think that as well. Manchester and Glasgow bands are there's not a snobbery, whereas sometimes bands or culture people from further south, not always, but sometimes can be very snobby. You know, it's not about what they do; it's about what they don't do. But I prefer those people who try and embrace everything, and they don't. I mean, someone like Stuart doesn't think he's better than everyone else just because he's in a really cool band. He just happens to be in a really cool band, you know. And he's an interesting guy to talk to because he's interested in everything. And those kind of people are far more interested in people of a very, very narrow aesthetic. You know, those people always find quite boring in the end.
Well, Mogwai don't think they're better than anyone, apart from Blur. They did say Blur are shite, and they could prove it. They could prove it in a courtroom if they had to. They walking around with. Basically, it started because they were at Teen the Park one year. I was there. I was really young at the time, and they started putting out Blur or shite Mogwai t-shirts, and then Blur fans were wearing Mogwai or shite t-shirts, and then there was a guy selling Blur or shite ecstasy tablets. One of these. And then the best thing of that was I seen a guy selling t-shirts or shite t-shirts. So props to that guy.
But it's funny. It's you know, so if Mogwai started off with membranes or shite t-shirts, I just think it was funny. I mean, that's the thing about in the north. We think that stuff's funny. You know, like Manchester, they always said that Tony Wilson was a twat, but he was our twat. You know, and Tony loved it. He hates it when people. This is the thing. It's the outer shell, the tough outer shell, in it. There's no sentimentality on the outside, but really, everyone's double sentimental, aren't they? So people used to bitch about Tony all the time, but when he died, everyone was heartbroken.
I've got a message for you from Patrick Murray. Says, Brady from Hollywood Brats is here with me. Sends his love. Mark, send love from Tam.
Hey, Hollywood Brats. What a band. Yeah. What a band that should have just the quirk of history, in it. You know, that thing, if punk had arrived 1 year later, they'd have had their chance to make it, you know. They're interesting bands like that. The bands that bridge between eras, you know, they're right between glam rock and punk, and it should have been huge. And years later, they sound even better, you know. the music, people always say the best bands get to the top. They don't. It's just that you have to be in the right place at the right time. You've got to be lucky. Yeah.
And it's strange as well that looking back on a scene, the bands that were the ones that your favourite bands of the time, but when fast forward 10 years or 20 years, certain things sound dated, and certain things that you thought were okay at the time sound absolutely brilliant, and they start to make a lot more sense. Maybe they were just a bit too ahead of the curve.
Yeah, it's true that. But the one thing I find is if I get into anything, I never go off it. So I just add it to the pile of stuff I like. So it's like the music I liked in 1972. I still love it now. I also like the music now as well. So I don't see what one has been better than the other, or I think one that it never sounds dated to me. It just adds to the pile of music. But the one thing that I agree with there is sometimes there's music you don't get when you're growing up, and then you work out to like it. And I hate that thing growing up punk when we were told there was music that we weren't allowed to like prog rock. You're not allowed to like it. There's meant to be this culture war. And then years later, I went in there. I was going into the prog rock jungle, and actually found bits and bobs I quite liked. Actually, it's just a phony war. Just to make set buy more records.
Patrick's asking if you like These Animal Men.
Yeah, I interviewed them a few times. I still know them actually. One of the guys out of them, he's got a new band with his girlfriend. Actually, they're great. We played a gig with them last year in Brighton. See, there's another band, a quirk of history, weren't they? Because they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's that little scene with them and Smash, weren't there? When they just before Britpop, wasn't it? When they had the Adidas.
Oh, John, you're freezing a little bit.
Have you got
The
me
magic
now?
of techno. Yeah, you're back. You're back. You're back.
Yeah. So I mean, those bands, These Animal Men and Smash, they basically part.
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit. Do you know what I'm going to do just now? If it's okay with you, I was going to play a Membranes tune. Do the Supernova.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
So I'll do that because I think you're maybe in a bad reception.
Yeah, I think
so
my battery's going a bit, so I'll be at home in a minute, so I can charge it.
All right, okay. Well, what we'll do is we'll just play the song then. Do you want to just introduce Do the Supernova? When did this come out?
This came out 5 years ago from the Dark Matter, Dark Energy album. There's the Membranes with Do the Supernova.
Nice one, man. Well, I'll let you get in the house and charge up your phone, and I'll see you in a little minute, mate.
Give us 5, yeah. All right.
No worries, man. Cool.
Yeah.
call that radio? Trying to call that radio.
Goodbye to the people who hated on me.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant that knocks it out in a minute.
That's mad, isn't it?
Is this a Netflix thing?
It's actually a podcast.
What the fuck's a podcast?
You know, it's kind of like a radio show.
Oh, that radio.
Yeah.
And is there a way we can do something like that?
I couldn't help it.
By injection inside or
Yeah, I think so because I think just paint in general because I think like my poem is in my painting.
No. Cut. You are tuned into You Call That Radio. We have the legend John Robb just getting his battery charged. I think he's just about ready. I was going to play a little. I said I would to Joe. I'd play a quick clip freeze. It's only 16 seconds long, but it's from Joe and Nicky Dart from the Twistettes. They've got a brand new project. Sounds completely different. It's called Minerva Wakes, and the first single's out next week. And there's a little teaser. So I'm just going to play his little teaser just now.
An American psychiatrist calls it audio stimulation.
You call that radio?
And that was a very short teaser from Minerva Wakes. So we've got a full album ready to go. And the first single and video will be out next week. I think we can go back to John, who's back in the house. How you doing, John?
All right, so back now, lying on the settee. Yeah.
Right stuff. Well, we just actually had a wee clip from Minerva Wakes. I know that you know the Twistettes. You've played with the Twistettes before.
Yeah, they're a great band. I like what I heard then. That sounded good, like a little electronic thing. Is that like a lockdown project?
Well, it's actually it's been sitting around for ages, but the lockdown has certainly given opportunity to get it finished. It was one of those things that was just sitting around, taking ages to get finished. But obviously, Joe's the kind of person that always books up gigs for the Twistettes, DJ gigs. So having that extra bit of time certainly helped. And the album's finished. It's been mastered, and the first video's out next week. So I'll send you a wee link to it, man.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I only heard 10 seconds there, but I like that really tough electronic sound. It sounded intriguing. I was just really waiting for it to go somewhere. Then went back on the show again.
Such is the nature of a teaser, eh? It's a bit too teasy.
Yeah, I've been teased.
Yeah, man. But I met you. I think the Twistettes supported you that night. You were playing the Membranes, were playing the ABC, and you were absolutely amazing live, man. I really enjoyed it, and it just seems like you've never lost the passion for playing a live gig.
No, I love. It's a privilege to be allowed to be on the stage and people actually want to come and see you. So no matter how tired or shitty you feel, you've got to transcend it, haven't you? But it's actually not that hard. You just walk out there and you feel amazing. It's unless somebody's been on stage, it's really hard. It's indescribable. The feeling. This is the funny thing, this lockdown thing where people are going about these gigs, right? You can't have a gig with only 80 people in the room. And I was thinking nearly everybody I know on the DIY scene was going, that many people.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to affect our gigs that much. You know what I mean?
Look, we know.
I suppose the problem comes down to you've got to hire out a bigger venue to play a smaller crowd, and then it's like, how much do you charge the tickets? And the electricity, the running costs of the venue are higher, so people are just going to need to come and go a bit. Maybe more expensive ticket prices the way forward, but I think people are happy. So much quality you get for bands that will maybe charge a tenner are well worth a tenner. So I'd happily spend 20 quid watching a really good tenner band.
what we have to admit, it's not going to be like it was before. You can't have 200 people in a 200 cap venue, otherwise we're all going to get ill. Okay, but we can have 50. Atmosphere's not as good. I'll put up with that. I'm in a band. If you want me to play 4 sets to 4 different sets of 50 people, I'll do that. I know it's hard work, and we'll just do it completely break even, cost price, so the venue can make some money. But if it's got different sets of 50 people coming in, there's an opportunity for the venue to be able to work out its running costs. I know it's not ideal. I know it's a bit of a drag, and I know it's not what it used to be. But we've got to do something. We can't just wave a flag of surrender because it isn't as good as it used to be. And I appreciate the venues and the promoters. Everybody has to make a little bit of money to survive. Everyone's got to live. But there are ways around it. If we think about it and we all work a little bit harder, we can make things happen.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And I suppose for the venue, if, say, for example, the Membranes were to play 4 gigs, then that's 50 new people coming in that they're all going to maybe buy more drinks than they would because they're only going to be in there for a shorter time. So maybe it'd be a lot more work, but maybe financially it wouldn't be as bad as people think.
No, you could probably make it back up round again. Or you could say, okay, there's a pot by the door, but just put a bit of cash in there for the venue, and everyone just be really honest about it. You know, once we've all got the money, then we'll take we'll take the box away. You know, or there's maybe tip the bar staff, tip the venue. I know everybody's struggling. I know there's going on. I know there's a recession coming, and we don't expect anyone to have very much money. But if we want to make things happen, we have to work out a financial model to make those things happen, or we just sit around at home feeling shit, you know. So it's
also there's lots of bands that aren't very good at the merch thing, and I know that sometimes we are as well. We maybe, we don't take t-shirts to every gig, but when we do, it usually works out financially. But maybe if it's going to be harder work and the fees not as much, and there's going to be less gigs, then maybe it's about the band investing in themselves, making sure that they're fully stocked with t-shirts, CDs, or whatever. And I'm sure that fans will know and appreciate that the bands are going through a tough time, and maybe they'll just put a wee bit extra in.
Yeah, and people do, and it's fantastic what people do and how generous people are, because people appreciate. I know when I started in a band, everybody thought every band was like the Rolling Stones and that everyone was on top of the pops. People actually did think it was luxury lifestyle. But I think now, after 40 years of bands, pretty good bands actually, just grinding around on a smaller level, people realise the reality of being in a band. I mean, it's not a slog; it's an amazing lifestyle, but it's not financially rewarding. You know, you're always it can get quite desperate sometimes, and people know that now, and they understand that, and they understand if they want it to continue, they have to invest in it somehow, and people are totally cool with that. And it's quite touching if you're in a position that people actually care that much. You know, we always put up different bits of merch. Even during this period, we've been on the Bandcamp, we've been selling loads of mad little things like little face masks. Even this guy who runs my page, he has so many stupid ideas, but they're funny. He got one up for a car freshener, which is actually the shape of our logo. We sold loads of them, and they look pretty good, and they're quite funny. And they pay all our bills, because we still have to pay to store our gear somewhere. You know, you're always having to run things at a slight loss. So all these things help. You know, it's a shame that that the value of the music went down, that we had to sell all the other stuff. You know, it's a shame Spotify didn't have a better model, or those people, or YouTube had a model that was actually more than musicians' favour. I mean, I'm not completely anti Spotify because I use it a lot to listen to for everybody's music in a way. I think eventually they will find a way of making it work. They just haven't found it yet, have they?
The best bit of merch I think I've ever seen was Mr. Scruff at the Archies was selling oven gloves. Mr. Scruff oven gloves. And such as the kind of place that the Archies is everyone had their MDMA vaccines early, obviously, but people were just buying the oven gloves and dancing around with oven gloves. I think they were charging about £25 for a set of oven gloves. But it's really, really good art that Mr. Scruff does. So yeah,
my mate was his manager for years, and they built a whole thing around Mr. Scruff, because obviously Scruff's pretty smart himself. But my mate he's very astute, So he built Mr. Scruff into this cool little brand, and they made Mr. Scruff tea. And my mate ran a really cool tea room in Manchester where you could only drink Mr. Scruff's tea in it, and you could buy Mr. Scruff teapots, and it's just an absolutely fantastic concept. And as a big tea drinker myself, I was thinking, oh God, I wish I'd thought of that. The idea of selling your own teapot and your own tea bags and your own loose tea is all amazing. But I've managed to trump him now because there's somebody who is a cosmetics manufacturer who now making a line of perfume dedicated to me. So there's going to be 3 John Robb perfumes coming out at some point.
Brilliant stuff, man. And also, Mr. Scruff, he certainly wouldn't have a problem about playing 4 sets back to back. I seen him play for about 8 hours at Beat Herder one year.
Well, you know, most musicians wouldn't, you know, even though we do very high energy, intense sets, I'd be quite happy doing it 4 times. I'd actually be happy just doing it all in a row. The break between would do me in more than the set, because once you come down, it's quite hard to get back up again. So if you could do it in a way, now this would be a really cool gig, wouldn't it? You actually play for 4 hours, and after an hour, the 50 people who came to the first set leave in an instrumental interlude, and the next 50 people come in, and you just carry on playing. It'd be like the Grateful Dead, but with a revolving audience.
Well, I've only ever done that once. Gyro Babies, we played Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and we had 2 gigs back to back, and we literally came off stage, drove round the corner, and then played another gig, and so they hadn't came down yet. We're still buzzing from the last gig, and then played the other one. And yeah, it was a really strange experience, because the second gig was definitely much better. We were much tighter, but it also felt like because we pretty much did almost exactly the same set, just kind of sort of looking over our shoulders, like hoping that nobody had somehow got to the second venue and we're seeing that we were playing the same stuff over again. We're getting loads of questions coming in, man, so I'm going to try and rattle through a couple. Stephen Watt says, John contributed a killer poem to the Joe Strummer collection, Ashes to Activists, that Stephen compiled. Any intentions to step back into the poetry world and give Cooper Clarke a run for his money? Shouts to Stephen Watt, an absolute legend as well.
Well, thanks, Stephen, and that's a real compliment, because I love writing words, and writing words is almost my favourite thing to do creatively. But because I play in a very noisy band, most of the time nobody ever hears my words, so they sort of disappear. So people don't really know me as a lyricist, but I really like the lyrics that I write, and I'm not saying I'm the greatest in the world. I read them and think, oh God, I like that. That came out really well, and it was an honour to write about Joe, because Joe was such an important person in all our lives and stuff. And I met him a few times, and I met all the Clash, and they lived up to their justification of a legend. In fact, I did that really amazing tour with Mick Jones when we did Glasgow with the Hillsborough tour, the Hillsborough '96 tour, with the Farm. Backed up Mick playing 8 Clash songs, the first and last time Mick has ever played all those Clash songs. For the 96 people who died at Hillsborough, it was an amazing tour. And we did Glasgow, we did the ABC, it was a magical night, as you'd expect. So it was an honour to write the poem for that. And yeah, I write poetry all the time, you know. It's just, it's a weird thing in it, because when you're in a band, they're called lyrics, but really the poems, aren't they? Now, would I be able to match Cooper Clarke? No, because I think Cooper Clarke, he is an absolutely special talent. I think Cooper Clarke really should be the Poet Laureate of the UK or whatever. You know, called on to write a poem for a special occasion. It'd be absolutely fantastic, wouldn't it? You know, something. You know, if the Queen died, they'd be going, "Oh my God, he's going to say something completely wrong here," and it'd be really funny. And I think Cooper Clarke he's one of the best poets of all time. He is an amazing poet, and I know he plays it for laughs a lot, and he's incredibly funny because he's a great nightclub comedian. But his actual rhythm and his words and his surrealism he brings to play are all amazing. And I know Cooper Clarke as well. I met him loads of times, and he's a dude. You know, he's dapper as well, and he's like, he's 72 now. He still looks cool as fuck and that. Yeah. So
I seen him last year at Eden Festival. In fact, Stephen Watt has just messaged me. I was on the same bill as him doing spoken word, and I was hoping, because of my time, I thought I was on before him, but I was on after him, and that was a tough gig, I'll tell you that, going on after John Cooper Clarke doing spoken word. Actually, I'll play a 5-second clip of when I met John Cooper Clarke outside the festival.
Right. Dr. John Cooper Clarke, do you call that radio?
So we got a wee recording him, because he was obviously busy. I didn't get a chance to get an interview with him, But I was like, you want to just give us that? I wish I recorded the start bit though, because at the start I was like, he goes, what's your podcast called? And I was like, you call that radio? He goes, it's an excellent name for a podcast. And I was like, I wish you kept that, man. That'd be quite. It's also the only person that's actually said it was a good name for a podcast. And but yeah, I think I agree with you, man. I think that maybe because he is so funny, sometimes people don't actually give him the respect he's due. And the same thing, I have Blind Boys talking about his podcast as well. It seems to be a strange thing that if you do a song, if you make people laugh, that for somehow people respect that less. And it's a strange thing.
It is strange, because being funny is a high art form. People who are genuinely funny is as great a skill as people who are genuinely melancholic. Cooper Clarke, he's an equal talent to Ian Curtis from that period. They both work completely different ways, but they both come from the same place, but they both comes out in different kind of ways. In fact, you could argue there's probably more darkness in John Cooper Clarke's poems than there is in Ian Curtis's. He does come from a very dark place, but he turned it into acidic, acerbic northern humour, didn't he? Which, of course, you in Glasgow would totally get because you understand people in Manchester because we have that symbiotic relationship. And Ian Curtis could be incredibly funny, in real life. He was a joker, So it's things aren't quite as narrow as people perceive, are they?
Yeah, John Cooper, I remember seeing him at the Archies, and he just got this kind of dry humour where he was like talking about the Grange Hill anti-drugs campaign. And he was, I can't remember the exact joke, but it was just something along the lines where you can't really prove if that worked or not, because, maybe things would have been far, far worse without that Grange Hill anti-drugs campaign.
Yeah, I know. And isn't that a really British thing, that thing of, making art out of talking about standing at a bus stop, watching afternoon television, it's the Sleaford Mods thing, isn't it? It's the magic and the mundane, which Cooper Clarke pretty well patented or made that modern post-punk version of it, which people like Sleaford Mods operates within that art that Cooper Clarke came up with. And I think Jason would definitely admit that Cooper Clarke was a profound influence on him. And God bless the Sleaford Mods, what amazing bands,
Sleaford Mods, one of the best, man. And I seen that you got Jason on your lockdown interview as well.
Yeah. Well, we known him for a long time and that. So, I mean, my friend used to put him on in London when he was just himself. When Andrew wasn't yet in the group and that. And Andrew's a top guy as well now. Andrew, when I speak to Andrew, I think, I must know you from the 80s because we're into the same groups and everything. He's younger than me, but he's from the same musical time zone. I know the manager, who's not the manager anymore, but the manager came to see us play a gig in Nottingham on a car park roof in 1986 when he was a little kid. It's just one of those things you think, oh God, I really am getting old now, because the people that are old, the people I think are old, I met them when they were 14, like little kids at gigs.
So in response to the poetry question is that you obviously you write lyrics, which are poems, and you have got a lot of them. So maybe that's a thing that will happen.
Yeah, I mean, there was talk last year doing a lyrics book, and I was just going to handwrite them all out because you can make them look quite arty, like a nice little artifact. My friend,
well, you can't with my handwriting. I've tried, believe me.
Yeah, well, my handwriting is pretty terrible, but it actually looks like drawings more than letters. But it does look good for writing out lyrics. I mean, before computers, when I used to write the lyrics out, I'll come back a year later, you go through your lyrics bag when you write new songs, and I can't read half of these. I wrote this. It's like written by a 4-year-old.
Marco is what another legend tuned in. He says, do you think that music and culture has got harder for working class kids to get into now? Nadol, squats, etc.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's something that it does annoy me. I mean, I was lucky. I was brought up in a more of a middle class family, and I appreciate the space I had. Although my parents were never spoiled to this, and they always. I mean, I was never in a subsidised band and that. But I always think the great art that was made in this country most of it's made by the working class kids in pop culture, and now they don't get in. And I think there's two reasons for that. It's not just financial, because there is no dole, and it's very difficult to finance it and make it something you can do. But also it's a cultural thing as well. And I think much as I love Six music, it tends to go towards more the middle class end. of alternative culture and the more working class bands, and I know it's a cliche, and working class bands are all different types of music, but let's say, for example, a band like Cortinas, whatever you think of them, they're working class Manchester bands, and they don't really get played in the radio ever, and they're looked down upon. I think we have a problem here, because if those kind of people, that kind of level, can't get played in the radio, what chance does a kid from the back end of Glasgow got nowadays? And I think again, like I talked about before, it's bad capitalism, because we're losing all the geniuses. You know, that 16-year-old kid that's listening to your show right now, who comes from the 30-story block of flats on the edge of Glasgow, it's the next Noel Gallagher, but he's not going to get a look in because he can't get his band there. No one's looking for those kids. No one's embracing those kids' talent, and it annoys me. And one of the things we always wanted to do on Lions on the Wall, my website, was we had no snobbery at all. So I mean, I like intensely arty music like Swans, but I also like street music like Oasis as well. And people don't understand that. They think, they say, how can you like both? And I go, well, because I do. I don't have anybody telling me what to like, And I think maybe it's because I came from Blackpool, which was a weird place to come from, where, because we were never cool. How could you be cool coming from Blackpool? So I don't understand any rules are cool, whether it's Oasis's notion of cool or Swan's notion of cool. I just like them both different ways. And what I'm trying to say is that I'm open to listening to anything. And I think everybody in pop culture, what we used to love about it was the one place in the old days where everybody could get a say, and everybody's musical idea was valid, and that doesn't tend to happen now. It's more like the university kids who do make great culture, but it shouldn't just be the university kids either. It should be the kids maybe who don't really understand how the media works. Doesn't mean their music isn't any good. I mean, some of the greatest music ever made is made by people who have no idea how other people how to get other people to listen to it. And I think maybe that's part of my job, especially in the old days when it was important as a music writer, was to try and make those connections with people. So
well,
yeah,
louder than war, man.
Right.
You gave us. I don't think it was yourself that reviewed it, but the platform Louder Than War gave Gyro Baby Shoot Utopia a 9 out of 10, and that was massive for us to just lend a bit of credibility, because we sent it out. I mean, maybe not we didn't send it out as much as we should have, but just getting a review from a website as big as Louder Than War certainly, made a few people just sort of give us a chance.
Yeah, well, that's important for us. I mean. The other thing we have on the site is I have different kinds of writers. There is a way of writing about music, and some of the greatest writers, like John Savage, who's a fantastic writer, but he's a university educated lawyer, which is great as well. Good for him. But I want his voice because I love his voice. But I also want to hear the voice of one of my writers works in Manchester Hospital as a night porter. And he's massively passionate about music, but he's not a Guardian style writer. When he writes about music, he's full of swear words. And people saying tone it down a bit. I say no, turn it up, because sometimes I want the analytical voices, the university voices, but I also want the fans who are equally intelligent, but the way they articulate is completely different. So some people can explain culturally why something's important, and some people just go, it just sounds fucking great. And to me, they're both valid ways to talk about music, because we're not talking about politics or things that have to be written about in a certain way. We're talking about art, and it's indefinable. There's no correct way of explaining why something affects you in a certain way. And sometimes all you could do about something is go, fuck yeah. I mean, it doesn't need analysing. It just needs 2 words. And I want both kinds of writing, and I want to encourage all those kinds of writing. And I want more women writers. And I don't want to just be, university educated white blokes writing about music who are good writers, but I want everybody in there. I want working class writers. I want the street writers. I want the normal people, to write about their culture as well, because I want them to celebrate their culture, because their culture is equally important. The culture. The culture you'll ever hear about is only classical music from the 17th century, which is great, of course. But I want to hear the mad folk songs. I'd love to hear what they were singing in Glasgow in the 17th century with totally some wild, dark lyrics about sex and violence and stuff, or what was it like to get ripped off in a marketplace in Glasgow. The Sleaf and Mods of the 17th century Glasgow would be what the folk music you want to hear is, isn't it? So I think we do ourselves a disservice by basically writing off 60% of the country, and it came back to bite them on the arse, didn't it, with Brexit, when people got so fed up of being ignored. It was just a V sign back at the Metropolitan Leeds, which I suppose I'm part of because I live in the middle of Manchester. But my ears aren't closed. You know, I'm always listening to people.
And Louder and More website is, check it out if you've not before. There's lots of good stuff in there. And the magazine, has that been paused just now?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, the COVID.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, the shops aren't open, and people don't really buy magazines now. It's a certain age group, which is my age group. To be honest, I don't really buy magazines. I look at everything on my phone, on my iPad, and that, because I'm always even this period now. I'm always moving about, so I'm always in town. I mean, there's nowhere to go. Luckily, it's summer, so I could sit around outside. But I'm not the kind of person who lies in bed reading a magazine or lies in the bath reading a magazine. I think they look beautiful in that. But I like instant culture. I want it now. And if I think of an idea, I like to Google and get it right now. If I want to hear a piece of music, I'd rather stream it because I want it right now. I can't be bothered to go to shop and buy the records, which is bad because I do support the shops. You know, I try to support them in different ways. But I like instant culture, which I guess I'm a child of the 60s. You know what I mean? We grew up with wanting everything instantly, and now we can have it instantly. So it's ace, you know. That idea of the quest to get a record, it took a month to get a record, would drive me insane. That's what it was like in the 70s. You hear it on Peel, you'd order the record and wait for it. And I just wanted it then, because by the time it came round a month later, I'd got into something else, you know.
Well, I just ordered my first record I've ordered in a while, Bob Villain, who's...
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, so that record is apparently, I got the message from Bandcamp today, it's been sent out, so hopefully it'll arrive tomorrow. But yeah, I've been kind of waiting for that since June. I think they put out the limited edition run, or maybe June or July. So I've been looking forward to putting that on vinyl.
Well, I'll tell you who else to check out. Billy No Mates. Have you heard her yet?
I've heard of, not checked out though.
Check it out tonight on YouTube. You'll thank me for it. If you like, I mean, she's managed by Jason from Stephen Modd's wife. So there's a slight similarity, but it's like Stephen Modd's with one person in them, and it's a woman, and she writes these really ace songs, a bit more pop, but they have edgy lyrics, and she's really cool. I interviewed her the other week. Yeah, she's fantastic. Her album's out soon. It's going to be massive. It's going to be a really big record.
I'll check that out tonight, maybe even towards the end of the show. I've got a couple of questions. The captain, can you ask John what he thought of Marky Smith as a musical genius, but more importantly as a person? I believe John knew Marky Smith very well from the 70s. Yeah,
I know Mark's, well, not from the 70s. The first time I met Mark Smith, 79, they played Blackpool. We met them that night. So it was early days and that. I mean, I like everybody. It was an up and down relationship. I mean, sometimes you can meet him and he could be really sweet. And the next time, I mean, he tried to bite me once, so he actually did bite me. He bit me on the lips. I had to go and get a tech jab because well, you have to, don't you? You know, and his teeth are a bit like little stumps and that. So and he bitch about me all the time, but I'm never that bothered. I don't mind people slugging me off, and I really don't care. You know, I do my thing, and I'm happy with my thing, and people are welcome to laugh at it, bitch about it, whatever. And all those years, I lived in the same town as him, and really, the Membranes are probably the only other band in town for all that period of time who were working in that kind of area. I mean, we loved the Fall, but we never wanted to be the Fall. We're just into the same kind of stuff. I mean, and so he slagged me off quite a lot on that. But I'll tell you what, the one thing was that of all the media people who always went on about the Fall, I was the only person who always went to his gigs. I've seen him about 100 times. I was at every gig in Manchester, and no one else who went about how much they loved him would actually be at the gig. So I was a consistent fan. So and I like a lot of the latter records as well. I thought that his last lineup was a really good lineup. I really like the records. And then he died, and it was sad. Of course, it's sad when anybody dies, but that's kind of sad because I think we could have been. I know he didn't really want to be anybody's friend, and I don't really care about being friendly because he was like more famous or whatever. I'm not interested in that kind of stuff. I just think he had an amazing mind. I was interested in his mind and his sense of humour as well. And I think we missed a trick there. We could have been like secret friends or something where nobody had to know. He could still slag me off, but I think we could have had some really interesting conversations. Just for that, it's a waste of a good conversation, isn't it? And then I've always known his sister as well. And so she started ringing me up recently. She's going, "Oh no, Mark really respected you. He adored you and everything." I was going, "He's always slagging me off all the time." He goes, but
maybe that's just the way he did it, though. He bit you, but maybe that's a sign of affection.
That's what she said. That she said that's how he would do. He didn't want to give anything away, so it was kind of a secret code and that. And then she said, "Were you bothered?" I said, "Well, not bothered at all. I was not the slightest bit bothered. I think we just missed a trick. We could have had there could have been a really great 2-hour conversation about all the stuff that we're into, the Mystic North and all the mad stuff. Because I was always into all that stuff as well, because I was pretty well read as a kid and that. But oh well, whatever. We still have the great records, don't we? Of an amazing band. Yeah.
And there's been a few legends we've lost recently. Denise Johnson, another one.
Yeah, it's Denise was 80. So everyone was heartbroken about it because she was a genuinely really nice person. When somebody walks in a room and it's a joy. That's what Denise was like. And I know people always say that people die. I would have told you that 6 months ago. And she also had the greatest bear hug in the world. It was a crushing hug, a hug full of the love of humanity. It was just a beautiful person and an amazing voice. And her voice turned Primal Scream into a pop band. They were always always a great band, actually. The early days are great, but they were never a top 20 band. But you stick her voice in it, and it was magical, And the shock of losing her so young. My friend found the body, actually. It's sad. She was totally heart. She rang me up about an hour later, and it was just like, oh God, we lost so many people that weekend because we lost Dan Martin, the NME journalist. We also lost CP Lee, who's about 71, who's in Albertos, still post-punk Manchester legend, been on the scene for years, and it makes you value. You think, oh my God, there's no time to waste, is there? And then you think, wait a minute, I can't. That idea, like, okay, I'm going to do everything I really want to do, but I can't because I'm stuck in the bleeding virus now. So it's not like you can do all those things to justify every minute of your life.
But exactly what you said as well, that we had Victoria McNulty, who's a poet from Glasgow, on the show a couple of weeks ago. Well, it's all blurring into one. 2 months ago, maybe a few weeks ago anyway. And she met Denise, and Victoria's obviously was starstruck because she's just at the bottom of the bill for an Oriki night. And she said that Denise was just absolutely amazing with her. And obviously she was just taken aback at how nice she was, because yourself, man, you don't know how people are going to be, especially your idols. They say never meet your idols. I've been lucky enough to meet a couple that were actually really nice. But I mean, have you ever had that experience where you've met someone and been surprised at how sound they were, or the opposite? You've met someone and they were actually a bit of an arse.
Well, we were talking about Mark Smith, and he was a difficult man, but super talented and that, and I don't expect them to be nice. Why should they have to be nice to me, or anybody like that? But to be honest, most people I've met have been really super nice. You strike it off them straight away. When the first time I met Mick Jones or whatever, he was like so polite and dead nice and that. And the best war stories. I mean, Jesus, we were sat in a van with him on that Hillsborough tour for hours, and he was just telling us loads of great Clash stories, just one after the other, And it wasn't like, I'm modest as well, if you go like, Joe's a talent of the band. I mean, you just hand your lyrics and anybody could write a song today. You go, no, I don't think so. I think you're actually a pretty good songwriter, Mick. So I'm great stories about people you've met. I met nearly everybody now from the punk and post-punk period right up to modern day.
You've seen so many different periods of time, and the music in the heart of Manchester's has produced some of the best ones as well.
Yeah, it has. It's amazing how dynamic the city is at creating world-changing bands for years. And then I guess if you can weigh it up in like pounds and ounces, I guess the talent pool in Manchester and Glasgow, I would say, is exactly equal. But what Manchester has is it has that knack of turning out a Roses or a Smiths or a Joy Division, a band that just goes beyond, and changes musical culture, was Glasgow just has great bands, Mogwai are an amazing band, but they're never been a generational changing band, not their fault, it's just a circumstance. I think Glasgow bands have this thing where maybe it's more an introverted thing, it's more self-deprecating, whereas Manchester bands who are actually quite humble when you meet them, but they definitely believe they're going to change the world, and you know, Ian Brown always knew the Rosies were going to change the world, you know, from the day he met him. But not in a way he said, God, he's arrogant. It was more like he was saying the most humble terms, but he's just an utter self-belief, you know. And Liam Gallagher's the same. And the Liam you see in the media is nothing like the Liam in real life. He's actually a very humble person. It's just, I think maybe Manchester always is up for the fight in a sense. It believes to become the main city in Britain, it has to fight 10 times harder than London. And it has become, bizarrely, in this weird self-fulfilling prophecy, it's on the way of being the biggest. I think in 50 years' time, it's going to be the biggest city in the country. You know, the rate of expansion of Manchester is the biggest one in Europe now. And this all came out of the music culture. So those bands like Ian, you know, people like Ian Brown who believed that they were going to be the biggest band, the greatest band of the world-changing band, is actually fed into the architecture, the bricks and mortar of the city. That whenever you build a building in Manchester, it has to be the biggest one in the country. It's odd that Manchester now looks like a piece of factory records artwork, but with the attitude of Ian Brown, who's also an incredibly humble person, you know.
Well, I think the last time we played Manchester, I noticed that it was all different, and we'd only been away for a couple of years. We were playing the Bread Shed, I think it's called, with a band called The Moods.
Oh, you're distorting there a bit.
Sorry, I'll say it again, man. The last time we were in Manchester, we noticed that it looked a bit different. Is it me that's distorting? Okay, wait there. I'm going to try something. Has that made it better? What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a track, a Gold Blade track, while we're waiting. I think we've got some technical issues. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I don't know if it's coming at John's end or not. I'll play one of John's tunes, Gold Blade. Give me a second. And hopefully we can come back to John Robb. It's a really fascinating interview, so hopefully we can get him back on to finish the conversation. So this is one of his other bands. This is Gold Blade. I think Patrick was in the comments shouting about Gold Blade. So let's play Psycho for Patrick.
Just cause they cannot deny us. The streets are full of sex and violence. The situation seems so vacant. Sometimes I feel so reckless. Sometimes I feel pretty wild. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho, yeah. We live in complicated times. My life is full of contradiction. Great victoriousness been under. Worlds are so rich and German. Sometimes I feel so reckless. Sometimes I feel pretty wild. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho, yeah. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho, yeah. Psycho! Psycho! He's like King Dempsey's in disgust. Who you vote for, you can never trust. Green brown and bar, dark glass, that is how. Stare from the left, by fucking straight file. Face that, middle to your nice. Go to every game, that's smoked up vice. Self-rap, get judged, did you understand? England destroys that, England is banned. Sometimes I feel so reckless. Sometimes I feel pretty wild. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho. was Psycho. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho. Yeah. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho. Yeah. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho. My name was Psycho. Yeah.
Brothers and sisters.
Is that you, Daniel? Are you before me?
Call that radio.
You call that radio.
Hello, yes, this is Dog.
It's You Call That Radio, and we're having a John is back. How you doing, John?
I'm all right. Yeah, I've switched my iPad now, so I can hear you.
Oh, brilliant, man. Yeah, I think it all went a wee bit robotic there. I don't know whose end that was, but hopefully everything's okay now. Yeah. I think we're getting cut off. We're talking about, I was just agreeing that, Manchester bands from Stone Roses, Happy Mondays, Charlatans, the Oasis, all these bands are life-changing bands. And the last time I was in Manchester, I was just agreeing that it did look different. I had only been away for a couple of years and it did look different. And I was playing the Bread Shed where we were supporting a band called The Moods. I don't know if you're aware of them.
Yeah, I know them. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was a great atmosphere as well. And it's always good. But like I said, Salford was our first one. We played the King's Arms, I think it was called. I think Paul Heaton had something to do with it. And then we played. I think because he gave us our first real break. He played one of our tunes on Six Music, and that kind of lended a little bit of credibility to the Scottish press that were kind of ignoring us. And then we played Salford. We played with a band called Death to the Strange and J.B. Barrington, the poet, and that was our first gig there. And so it went really well. And it's probably one of the Salford or Manchester when we're doing a tour. We always get a good reception down there.
Yeah, I mean, so it's such a great music city. There's so many venues here, and they nearly always have a crowd in them. Before the virus, there's about 35 venues in the city centre. So it's amazing. I mean, I'm part of the Music Venue Trust, and they're always fighting for the future of venues, which is a great campaign. And they'll talk about another city where there's 5 venues. Now there's only 3. And I go, well, God, there's more than 30. Sometimes there's 40 venues in Manchester. They never believe me. I say, no, it's just the nature of the city. Yes, but people here love music. There's a great music history, so people are proud of that. And people still support it, they support new stuff, etc. And it's got a big catchment area. So people come from a long way in because Manchester's such a great night out. But also the council is very pro-music as well. They know it's a big part of the culture. It's something that has to be treasured. It's what gives a city worldwide a resonance. It's the 2 football clubs, of course, are really famous. You go to China, they're both dead famous and that. But cool Chinese kids, they know that Manchester's got a cool music history, and therefore it must be a cool city. I was speaking to somebody the other day. I had a meeting with somebody from China, and they were saying that in Hong Kong, if all those people have to leave Hong Kong, they got British passports, and these are quite high up dynamic business people. They all want to come to Manchester, about 20,000 of them, which would be quite amazing. They'll bring all their skills here. So will Manchester turn into some sort of European version of Hong Kong? I mean, it's interesting the way cities change and fluctuate, and history change, and cultures come, and each wave brings something else. When I used to bump into Tony Wilson, which I bump into nearly every day going down the street because he lived around the corner from me, he'd always gone about Manchester being a city of immigrants, and each wave of immigration had a massive impact on the city, whether it was the Italians coming in the Victorian times who brought their music in. There used to be Italian like acoustic musicians on every corner of Manchester, of the streets and the Italian quarters, probably in Glasgow as well. It's a very Italian city. The Irish came, the French came originally and brought the cotton. Everybody came in and brought things in, which makes Manchester what it is today. And it's a great example of multiculturalism that works. When I go to my gym, it's just such a mixture of people. Some people, well, this will be last year now. Some people would be doing Eid. There'd be Hindus in there. There'd be like Jewish kids in there. Just people from all over the world, all different cultures, all in a room, all just getting on with it. And it's Nigel Farage's worst nightmare. God, there was even Scottish people in there.
We got someone saying small
You
world.
know I'm half Scottish, don't you?
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. No, I didn't. Man.
My mum's from Selkirk, which is not
All
quite
right.
Glasgow, but it's probably the opposite of Glasgow, like a little tiny little place on the borders. But
it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, really nice. And she's lived in England for 60 years now, and she's never lost a Scottish accent. And she's always talk about going back to Scotland. I was going, Mum, you're 87. You know Vic Galloway, don't you?
Yes, no, Vicky. Yep.
Here's a really weird one. I was 10 years ago. I was at a music conference and I met Vic, probably longer, and I was saying, so obviously you have the Scottish conversation. I go, I'm half Scottish. My mum's from Selkirk. He's going, no way. He goes, my mum's from Selkirk. And I was going, whoa, that's so weird. How old's your mum, Vic? And he goes, at the time, whatever she was. I go, oh, God, that's weird. She's the same age as my mum. They must know each other. And we were in, I don't know where we were. We were in Canada, but I rang my mum up. I said, do you know whatever her maiden name was? She goes, I was at school with her. And Vic rang his mum up, and his mum was going, oh, Skinny Lizzie. I remember her from school. That was my mum's nickname, which I never knew before. And then his uncle used to live across the road from my grandparents. And it's like, that is so weird, because me and Vic have had quite similar lives. I'm older than Vic, but we both, our parents came from Selkirk. We both got really into punk rock, and we both done media for years. So it's kind of an odd parallel we didn't know nothing about at all.
Also, the way you said "no way" is Vic Galloway. That was quite a good Vic Galloway impression.
Oh yeah.
I think
when he does the Mark Riley show, he stays on my settee because the BBC won't get him a hotel, so he always has to crash out around here. But it's great because he's really good fun, and we talk about music, and I give him lists of stuff, and he gives me lists of stuff to listen to. He's a massive enthusiast. He may not like all the stuff you like, but he likes the stuff he likes, which is great. Because at the end of the day, we're all wherever we're working in music, we have to be enthusiasts. Otherwise, we shouldn't be doing it.
And we've got a message from Patrick who said that the best live bands ever are Goldblade and Alabama 3.
Wow. Well, thanks for that, because I've seen some amazing live bands in my life. So to be considered the best, I'll take that as a high compliment. I mean, when I play whatever I play on stage, whoever I'm playing with, I give it everything I've got. It's mentally, physically, and spiritually. When I come off that stage, I want to be completely drained. Whether it's one person in the room or it's a massive festival. It's an honor. Like I said before, it's an honor to be allowed on a stage.
And we've got a message from Tunnel Mental who says everything that goes around comes around. We did a remix for Membranes, and I art directed an Oasis music video, 6 Degrees of Separation, Small World.
Oh yeah, well I know Tunnel Mental. Yeah, they do great stuff. Yeah. Wow, you got people from all over the place to your show, haven't you?
Yeah, it's certainly an international. I think Tunnel Mental's in LA these days.
Yeah, it's amazing. What the hell's the time there? There must be dinner time, innit? Yeah.
Well, dinner time in Scotland, that would be about 6 o'clock.
Well, dinner
time and tea. You've got tea, haven't you?
Breakfast, dinner, and tea. Yeah, no one understands. So if you're down south and go, oh God, I'm starving, I could do my tea, and he goes, oh, you're gonna have a cup of tea?
Just a cup of tea.
Tea.
Although what is strange about Scotland is dinner time means dinner, but I'm pretty sure at school we had dinner at lunchtime. It was dinner time at lunch, so you would get 2 dinners.
Breakfast, dinner, and tea. That's how it is.
Breakfast, dinner, and dinner. If you're going to school in Scotland, then somewhere along the way it changes to lunch. Also, we got Mako says legend. This is after we played one of your videos. Lou23 says tune, and
Lou, thanks Marco. Yeah.
Lou also says, I've loved using this time to learn to produce my own stuff. Been great for creativity, and with You Call That Radio, it's been brilliant for finding new artists and staying connected. Great interview. Thanks, Lou. Thanks to everyone who tunes in. It's certainly kept me busy, and I've enjoyed doing it. And
Well,
also, Lorna,
shows like this is the fabric, this is what holds it all together. It was always like this. In the 80s, when the membranes, we lived on the fanzine scene. Somebody interview you for the fanzine, and then you say, "Have you ever put a gig on?" They go, "No." You go, "Well, just go and find a pub in Doncaster. We've got a plug in it, and we'll come and play." And that's how we toured. We toured all around Europe like that, because the music business didn't want us. So, we existed outside it. I know that's normal now, but it was harder then. But it didn't matter, To make art, you have to create the space to make the art, don't you? And anybody exists like that. Even if I don't like the music, I will champion them, because I don't have to like the music to like the culture people are making. I don't have to even understand the music, it crosses over to a lot of scenes, like Manchester at the moment, there's a huge underground drum and bass scene. And I understand exactly how and why they're doing it and how they operate, because it's the way I've always operated in my music, I mean, it's not like I'm not down on mainstream music. I like some pop records. I just wish they would give everybody a bit more help, though. It shouldn't just be about the 1%. It should be about everybody, shouldn't it?
absolutely, man. And we've got Lorna Love saying, love the membranes.
Oh, thanks, Lorna. Yeah.
Patrick saying Goldblade were fucking brilliant. Me and Hooligan saw them at the Weddywood rooms in Portsmouth. John bought us tequilas all night. A pure gentleman.
I don't even drink.
Well, I was going to ask you. I know that you don't drink. When I met you at the ABC, you weren't drinking and stuff. Was that a lifestyle change, or has that always been the case?
No, I drank when I grew up, because when I grew up in the 70s, it was a rite of passage. So when you were 16, you went to the pub. I remember drinking the first pint, thinking, "Ooh, it tastes horrible. This. Oh God, I feel really tired now." And then I just carried on, saying it must work. And then for about 14 years, I drank. And I was interested in other stuff as well. I mean, we used to like magic mushrooms, and I really liked ecstasy. And drugs are really good fun, but they don't do everybody a lot of good. I was all right with them, but for other people I know have been really, really messed up by drugs and things. So I don't champion them as a complete lifesaver. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to back off when it gets bad and things. But I think they should be legalised, and I think people should have personal responsibility. But I don't think it makes you rock and roll just because you drink and take drugs. You get rock and roll's about the music. It doesn't have to be about being off your head. So when I got to 30, I had an abscess on my tooth actually, and I had to have tablets. And you couldn't drink, and I still went out. In fact,
they're dangerous. They're the ones that they say. I had them before. You get told by the dentist, and you also get told by the woman at the dentist table when she hands you the prescription, and then you get told by the pharmacist as well, don't drink in these things.
Well, actually, the Glasgow connection is I went to see the Pastels that night because Stephen's a friend of mine from years ago, and they're a great band. And I wasn't drinking. I thought, well, I've had as much fun tonight as I normally have. I'm just going to stop drinking. So I did, and that was it. So I never drank again. And I felt miles better. I woke up in the mornings, I could wake up earlier, get more done in the day. And I went out at night and I still had a laugh, So it was, I realised I didn't really need it. I'm sure other people, if you're an airline pilot or a surgeon or you live in a crap place, you may need space to escape into. And I have no problem with that. And I'm not somebody, I've done a lot of lifestyle choices, but I don't push them on other people. The fact I may not eat meat or whatever, but I don't lecture other people. I don't care what the people do. It's, I'll tell you why I do it, and there's lots of good reasons why I do it. But it doesn't mean anybody else has to do it for me to be able to talk to them or be friends with them or whatever. It's this idea. It's become like that on the internet now, isn't it? Where there's a competition of righteousness, and a lot of righteous stuff, of course, is good, but it's not a competition. It's like, it doesn't make you a better person. It's like that thing, like, some great music is made by completely awful human beings, but I can still listen to it. It's kind of weird now. It's got very, very rule led, and I think it's good that certain things aren't tolerated anymore. Of course, women should be treated equally. Of course, women should be paid equally, and all those things are really good. But when people talk crap, do we have to lock them out of our society forever? Can't we just go to them and say, could you just be a bit cooler about this? Can we have like a nice conversation about this? This thing where everybody's shouting at everyone else, it's not getting anywhere, is it? It just makes people more entrenched in their corner. Of course, there's people I really don't agree with, but I don't want to unfriend them on Facebook. I want to talk to them. I want to say, look, we can still be mates. Can you can we just pull back from your position slightly?
Well, it's been quite good on this show when we've had the conversations, especially with conspiracy theories about or alternative opinions about COVID and stuff like that. And it's been quite good. People that you'd maybe argue with on, I mean, a Facebook thread's not designed for conversation. It's who gets the last word in, basically. But when you actually have a conversation with someone, you can see where they're coming from, and you can maybe just explain your side of the story a wee bit better in real life. We're not. There's been no rule book with the internet. It's just been kind of thrust upon us. It's become part of our daily lives, and nobody really knows how to behave or what the etiquette is.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've learned, and maybe it's because I interview people, is the skill of a great interview is being a listener. So you're very good because you don't interrupt. And you'll notice I don't interrupt you because I learned that from being an interviewer. And the worst interviews I see in conversations is when people talk over the person they're interviewing, like they're more interesting. I think if I'm interviewing Jello Biafra, no one's come to see me. People come to see Jello Biafra. If I'm interviewing Ian Brown, people want to know what Ian Brown's got to say, and I just guide them. My job is to guide them through the conversation. It could just be a nodding of a head or just vibing the information out of them. I don't have to say an awful lot to get a great interview, and it's no one's paid to see me. No one's interested in me. You got to leave your ego at the front door. That's an important part of an interview, isn't it? And I think this goes right through society now. Where people just shout and don't listen. And I'll listen to anybody. I'll listen to Nigel Farage. I don't agree with him, but I'll listen because I'm actually quite fascinated by why he can be how he is. I don't mean in a good way. I'm just interested in what makes him tick. Why is he so full of hate, really? I think it's almost like a Buddhist thing. There's that Buddhist meditation on death. There's also the Buddhist meditation on you have to meditate on the person you really can't stand and think and meditate on them all the way through and in a way to try and understand them. And I think it's very difficult, but it's actually quite a good way of dealing with the world, isn't it? Because otherwise we're just getting so polarized now. It's just a nightmare.
It's weird that the thing that's always confused me about Farage and a lot of the Brexit stuff was that these are somehow anti-establishment. Because he gets pictured with a pint or something. People somehow think that means he's anti-establishment, and it blows my mind that people see a banker, a Tory, and these types of people.
It's just playing an image. Also, it's very patronising to think that a working class person only holds a pint in a pub. This wasn't that the Mannix thing. Mannix, well, I love the Mannix. And their whole thing was, it's the libraries as well. It's working class intellectuals, self-taught. The Mannix learned it all sat in a bedroom in a Welsh mining town. They didn't go to the pub. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going to the pub, but it's all culture is much more multidimensional. It's just because people are working class doesn't mean they hold a pint in a pub and that's it, or it's all Brexit voters are obviously all racist. It's not like that. Everything's nuanced and everything's in different levels. And some people are scared, some people are angry, some people are confused, some people don't get all the information. We're never going to win this argument if we just put everybody into one box. Like the Farage thing, it's utterly patronising to think that all men of a certain age who come from a certain part of the city stand in a pub with a pint pot. It's a cliche, isn't it? I know it worked for them a certain amount of time, but it doesn't work in the long term, does it? And I say we have to listen to people. You have to listen to your enemy, and your friends. It's the power of listening. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Well, I have got better at it since I started doing interviews. So I've been doing. We try to do a show almost every day. I think we've done it 105 since lockdown began, like this, the TV kind of thing. But before that, I started in June. We did about 23, 25 audio podcasts, which were quite different because I had time to plan it and add some skits, add music, and it was a totally different format because obviously this is a lot more off the cuff. But it's really helped me to be a better listener just in a normal conversation as well, because the last thing I wanted when I listened to myself back was like I could hear myself doing it, and it was like, and I wasn't even aware I was doing it. But now I think it's really helped me because I'm interested in hearing what other people. The reason I'm inviting people on the show is because I want to hear what they think. But I think it's something that comes with a bit of practice, I think, as well, because we naturally sometimes just say things, or we just talk, or we listen to someone, but we're just waiting for our turn. And it's good that, just going back to what you're saying about the two things, I think, with the fact of drink, alcohol, drugs, and stuff like that, it does seem to me that it's got a shelf life, especially if you want to be a touring musician and stay healthy going into a longer age, because you're surrounded by so much temptation. So just I was agreeing with that. I think that once the hangover gets so bad, is it, you've got to start questioning, is it worth it? And that's where I'm at just now. I behave myself a lot more than I used to, but at the same time, I'm still, getting myself occasionally with a really bad hangover. And I'm like, why am I doing this? So I'm starting to look at maybe just taking that out of my lifestyle. Also, quite interested. I'm just assuming that you're into sort of more mindfulness, meditation type things. That's something I've been trying to get more into as well, because I've got quite a hyperactive mind. So have you got any advice? Because I know there's been a few people on the show that have been talking about it, and I know there's a lot of viewers that are trying to get into it. So what advice would you give to someone who's just maybe starting out with meditation or anything like that?
It's actually really difficult because, like you, I've got what they call the monkey mind. It jumps about a lot. I mean, I did do it. I don't do it anymore, but I did do it for about a year. And I was doing the one where you count your breaths. You count 1, 2, 3, 4 in, 1, 2, 3, 4 out, and it's simple. It's a simple thing because you just get the base. The base of it is actually, if you don't count and you just think about your breath, and it really is humbling. Because no matter what you think in the world, whatever you feel in the world, whatever's going on in the world, without your breath, you don't exist. And with the New Membrane single is partially about that. It's about breathing in and breathing out, which is a very simple idea, but it's a very 2020 idea because COVID affects your breath and affects your lungs, and also the Black Lives Matter thing where the I can't breathe thing. And I was thinking, God, these are themes that run right through that song. The power of breath, the right to have your breath, the base of everything is breath. And it's all about meditation. And meditation is about the breath. It's not a deep intellectual exercise. It's something that everybody does. And it's actually, when you think about the breath, you appreciate the fact that you can breathe. I know it sounds really simplistic because it is simplistic, not everything has to be complex, and that's the basis of the idea to it. If you find that difficult, just go running, because running is a meditation in its way as well, because you have to concentrate on the running. You don't, the stresses will melt away because you're doing something your body's built for. Your body's built to move. It's not built to sit in a chair all day. It gets you back in touch with yourself. And, if you find it difficult, run with music. But if you find, if you can run in a park and listen to nature, you tune back in. We float above nature. We're a part of it, And when you hear the birds singing and you hear the wind and everything like that, I know it sounds hippie-ish, but the hippies are right about some things. We've become too detached from the world, and we got bitten on the arse for it by the virus. That was the planet saying, "Come back, you're not that clever." We got beaten by a piece of RNA. It's not even it's only half a life form, but it's actually until we get the vaccine, it's slightly ahead of us, and it's humbling. And it's always good to be humbled, isn't it? Know your place in the scheme of things.
Well, I think that the other theme that kind of ties in with the breath is, in what you're saying, is that kind of living in the now moment where you just got to look around and say, right, what are you worried about? You're okay in this brief moment now. And I think that, as a society, we plan things, whether that's, usually booking up tour dates or festival dates going right into the distance. You're thinking about that. You're planning your holidays. People are making plans all the time, and now there are no plans. So it's quite unsettling for a lot of people, myself included as well, because there's two things I like to do. I like to plan the gigs because I learned quite young that if you don't plan, I didn't like planning at all, but if you don't plan your gigs 6 months ahead, you're not going to get a good fee. The promoter's not going to be able to promote you. You're not going to. You need to think ahead, but also like being able to go with the flow. And with COVID, you can't just go to the flow and go to a gig random spur of the moment. So that's gone. You can't just pop into a restaurant or anything like that. I think you can now, but you need to book it in advance, and there's lots of rules that go with it. You can't just bring an extra friend if you've only got a table for 3 or a table for 4. So I think it's really important to now, more than ever, to just actually focus on the now. How are you just now? And I think that although it is difficult, I'm trying to get into it, the breathing, the idea of breathing and living in now. And I've also really been enjoying listening to The Power of Now as well, which is quite I'd recommend an audiobook for people to check out.
No, I mean, the present is the only thing that exists. There is no past. There is no future. We're here and we're now. Although, if you start thinking about the universe, then it gets a little more complicated because time curves. So if you go trillions of miles away from here, you're actually about 10 days ahead or behind. I can't remember what it is. So it gets weirder and weirder. But we can only deal with where we are at the moment. In fact, think about the universe as a meditation, because anything that's really worrying you makes no sense in terms of the universe. When you think we're on a tiny little planet in a really obscure solar system on a galaxy that's not even it's a non-league galaxy. It's tiny, and there's 2 billion stars in it. So think about that. Think about how small we are and how relevant we are. It's actually, some people panic with that thought, but I find it really relaxing. The idea that what really matters doesn't really matter. But what
it's zooming out. That's zooming out, especially it works quite well if you're concerned about a little problem. The more you zoom out from it, the more ridiculous it seems that you're actually bothered by it.
It's true, isn't it? That people worry about what somebody says about them, which is fair enough. It's a very human thing. But when you stretch it out across the universe, it doesn't mean anything. In 1,000 years' time, no one's going to care about that person or you. You've gone. You've evaporated. You've gone back to the universe. We all go back into the universe as little bits of matter. We're eternal. We're eternal in ways that people don't realize. The stuff that made the Big Bang makes my nose. it's ace, isn't it? What a beautiful thought. That all the matter that makes us up has been here forever. It's all those things. They put everything into context. But I'm not saying that makes me chilled out. I mean, sometimes I'll go, oh, that fucking twat. What do they say that for? It's the same. And they go, no. Let's get that into context. It doesn't mean a thing.
Got some really good comments coming in. Joe Bowen, another legend. Top interview, Martin. Good stuff coming from Mr. Robb. A lot of common sense and good, healthy thinking advice.
Thanks, Joe.
Tunnel Mental. We are told from babies, pay attention. Meditation teaches us that we need to take the time to still the mind. It is essential to breathe and let go of the monkey brain.
It is. It's mental monkey brain. It's about 50 monkeys up there, like all shouting all at once.
Patrick says, you're pulling on my heartstrings with your truth lads. Thank you. My mum has just passed. This is helping me.
Oh, that big hug to you, Patrick. Yeah, I know it's tough. My dad died about 5 years ago, and even though he's 94, you think you've done the training by then, don't you? And you've been in old people's home for 2 years, and you think, okay, I'm ready for it. I'm a grown man. I'm ready for it. And it hits you like a ton of bricks, doesn't it? And you go to the funeral and you stood there, and me brother and sister, we did a little reading, and I did a little. Well, I thought, I can handle it, but I do public speak all the time, and I'm quite a shy person, but I learned to conquer the fears over the years. And I stood there. My brother did a great one, my sister did a great one, and I went up and I cried. And I'm a northern man, and crying in public is the biggest nightmare ever. You'd rather die than cry in public. But and I cried. I thought I'd stay tough for my mother, and I couldn't do it. And it was an incredibly human moment. And there've been times I hadn't got on with my father, but I did in the end for the last 15 years and that. And when you're ad-libbing a talk, it's quite weird because your mind doesn't go where you want it to go, and all the truths start coming out. And I started saying how important it was for me to make up with him in the end. And we became very good friends at the end, and how close I got. It was too much, It was just like I couldn't control the emotions. And I'm trained as a northerner to control that shit. That's why we have rock and roll in the north. That's where we get that stuff out, we get out in our music and our culture, not in public.
Which is a shame, because obviously if we did learn to cry in public and stuff like that, we'd probably be doing a lot better, especially males.
I think in the last 10 years we found it easier to do this kind of stuff, but at school it would have been the end. You would have been the bullied kid for years because you were actually a human being. And this weird thing that men think that women think they're soft if they cry, whereas women find it adorable that a man's in touch with his emotional side. You know, in the end, you realise that we're weak because we can't embrace our emotions, but we find ways of getting it out. But you know that weird thing, like men and their friends, we don't talk about this stuff. You know, it's we have to do it through the music. It's the only way we could ever deal with it. Maybe that's why so much great art came out of such an emotionally repressed island. You know, that's how we dealt with it. You know, Manchester and Glasgow, they're tough cities. There's not much leeway, you know, for that kind of stuff. There was no time for it, was there? You know, it was, you had to survive. You know, and the way to get it out was in the culture and that. And luckily for the generation that came behind us, maybe post Acid House, like I was saying earlier, the people gradually got more in touch with their emotions and they find it easier to deal with and stuff, you know. And I could deal with other people's, you know, if other people are sad or down, I'm a great listener. I can sit there and listen to it for hours, and I find I'm very good at helping people. But if it was me, I couldn't do it. I have to deal with myself, you know, because that's the way I grew up, and that it's not good. It's not good, but that's just the way it is. Yeah.
I've got another comment coming in from Che, who says, first person I ever interviewed when I started writing was John Robb in a transit van in Carlisle as Goldblay were due to play a venue that night, probably around 95, nervous as fuck.
Che, I remember it. I remember the gig. I remember the interview as well. It's funny.
Well, that's a good thing about not drinking on tour.
Oh, I've got a photographic memory. I can remember stuff from when I was drinking as well. It's a cursed blessing because it's theoretically it should be a brilliant thing to have, but it's completely useless.
Do you just bump into people and you'll recognise everyone and they might not recognise you?
I remember the faces. I can never remember the names, but I can remember being there. I can remember sat in that van. I can remember what the van looked like. I can remember where the gear was and where I put it. I can remember what it felt, how cold it was, or whatever. I can remember all those things. You know, I can replay gigs in my head of what was going on and what people were wearing, what it sounded like. So I can remember that interview and stuff. Yeah, it's funny when people say they're nervous of you in it because you never think you're a scary person. But I often meet people who say, "Oh, I remember you back in Blackpool in the old days, and we were all terrified of you." I was going, but I'm not a fighter, you know. I'll stand my grounds, but I'm not. I don't start fights to people and that. I don't consider myself a scary, imposing person at all, you know. And I like it if in a situation like in an interview, I like it if people feel, you know, they embraced in a way, you know. It should be the way I always saw punk rock culture. It was an embracing culture. Everybody was involved in it. Everybody was an important part of it. You know, it's you leave the venue, you say goodbye to everybody and thanks everybody who works in the venue. It's not. I never see myself as being above somebody else, and I appreciate that anybody wants to interview me. You know, whether there's one person reading the fanzine or it's a huge media outlet, it doesn't make any difference to me. They're all. It's important that people want to know. It's touching that people want to know something about you. You know, it's great, and the other way around as well. You know, when I'm getting interviewed by somebody, I'm often start getting more interested in them than in myself.
Well, it's very much appreciated that you said yes to this. I knew that it was someone that I've always wanted to interview, and straight away it was everyone who watches the show was very excited by you being on the show, man. So I really do appreciate you taking the time. And your own interviews for people to check out, because we've kind of talked about it. If we just want to maybe plug that a wee bit.
Yeah, I'll put them on my YouTube channel now. It's I think if you just Google John Robb interviews YouTube, it will turn up. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but we put a lot of stuff up there. You know, like Stuart from Mogwai, Ian Rankin did. Well, I've also been putting old interviews up as well. So Ian Brown, I interviewed him for my Manchester book, and he said it was cool. He doesn't do interviews, but he let me put up a 90-minute interview with him that I did. So that was really good because he's actually weird if someone doesn't do interviews. He's a brilliant interview because he has a very good memory and he's very similar to Johnny Marr. He understands pop culture really well, and he knows why he liked a certain group at a certain time and all the things that went round it. And you can talk about any kind of music with him, and he knows the backstory to it. And it was a great story about Manchester and growing up in Manchester in the early days, the Roses and stuff like that. So that's on there as well. That's an audio.
I've not seen that one yet, man. I look forward to that. Ian Brown's an absolute legend.
Yeah, if you've got to go.
It was good to see Sean Ryder. It was good to see Sean Ryder in lockdown.
Yeah, well, I've done a few with Sean. I'm good buddies with Sean. Sean's amazing. He's really he's funny. He could have been a comedian. He's got absolutely deadly wit. And
One of the last gigs I actually went to was his, I think it was a Q&A at St. Luke's he did, and he was just doing a talk, and he was perfect for it.
Oh, he's great doing that. Well, he wanted me to do that, but the promoter got other people to do it. But because me and Sean got on really well, I think the promoter missed a trick there. Because the thing about Sean is he's got a tangents mind where you ask him one question and you get 6 different answers all at the same time. But I like those kind of people. I can run with those tangents. So if he goes off on UFOs or crazy shit going down in Salford, I can run with those conversations, instead of like getting stuck. I'm fascinated by that. I like those kind of minds, octopus minds. It's not just like, well, I'll just do this because I do that. It's like it just goes off on a wild tangent. Julian Cope, he's another one. You asked Julian Cope about music, and you talk about Stone Circles within 30 seconds, and somehow he ties it all back into punk rock in 1976. So those agile minds are fascinating, aren't they?
It's incredible, man. Obviously, I've been a massive fan. Not just the Happy Mondays, but Black Grape, and also just Sean Ryder as well. Just the way that he dealt with media, the way he dealt with fame. He just didn't seem to take himself too seriously, and just seemed to have fun.
You just get Sean as he is. But the thing about Sean is because he's northern, he's quite modest. He's actually far smarter than he even knows he is himself. If he could have been asked, he could have gone to university and gone to the top. In any job he wanted. He is actually quite intellectual, but he's never. Instead of spending his youth reading books, he spends his youth doing smack, didn't he? but he's still got a big brain. He's very intuitive.
Well, you can tell that if you just look at his lyrics. If you just look at his lyrics written down, it's incredible.
I mean, Tony always said he was as talented. Sean's as talented as Bob Dylan, and Sean go, "No way, Tony, fuck off, no way." But after all these years, he's actually realised that Tony knew, because Tony wasn't just bigging him up. Tony actually genuinely said that, and that's why Tony loved him. He knew he had an incredibly talented person. The whole band's talented. They're just such a bizarre group. I mean, they're an avant-garde group. Somehow ended up being a pop band. They were close to Can or Captain Beefheart, but somehow made it into pop music, which is an even bigger skill. I mean, Can and Captain Beefheart both want to be pop bands, but the Mondays actually made it into pop music. And I love pop music. All punk, all great punk bands, the Pistols or whatever, were pop bands. They're having top 10 hits. I mean, what's the point of making something brilliant and just playing it to your mates? It should be right in the middle of the mainstream. The mainstream becomes better because you've got great stuff in it.
Sapien says, great interview, John. You make very good points about humanity, equality, tunes too. Actually, Sapien is on the show tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? Yes, tomorrow night. Yardworks SWG3. It's a collection of artists, Gaz Mac, Marianne and Sapien, who have done an amazing job of a venue in Glasgow, the SWG3. They've renovated loads of graffiti art, and they're doing somewhere safe where people can go, and they are taking the rules seriously, but you can get food and drink in a safe environment. The artwork's incredible, and I'm really excited to hear about the rise of that. That's tomorrow night, and then on Friday night we've got Farzane Zaman, who's from Iran, came here for a 6-month course, and then was managed to become a refugee because they banned music in Iran or something like that. It's a very interesting story. I've seen the documentary she did for the BBC Social. Her music's incredible, taking traditional music from Iran, and obviously she's settled in Glasgow now, so I'm really excited about that. And Friday night
I love Iranian music, Iranian classical, Iranian folk music. It's amazing music. It's really atmospheric. And I actually know a band in Tehran, in Iran. They're like a prog metal folk band. All right, I got them a gig at Tallinn Music in Estonia, and the day before they came out, we had to get the president of Estonia to speak to the vice president of Iran to vouch that they wouldn't stay in Estonia and go back to Iran. They wouldn't become refugees, but they had no intention that even though it's a problematic country to live in, they felt very much Iranian, and they were prepared to put up with the problems they had. And when they did the gig, they were mind blowing. They had a woman who was a singer, but it's the first time she'd been allowed to sing in public, because they're not allowed to sing in public in Iran. They do gigs in flats where they play, but you can't sing in a public space with a woman singer. And I got them to remix the Membranes track as well. And they made a video when they went out to the countryside and filmed this amazing countryside. And I'm in touch with them quite a lot. So
is that on YouTube?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. The video.
What's it called, man? Or maybe we could play the show out with that.
Oh God, I forgot. I'd have to remember. Oh God, I'm trying to remember the name of the band off the top of my head.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah. It is a amazing track. I could Google it actually while we're talking. I'll just go to another part of it.
No worries.
Yeah.
No worries, man. We've also got Sapien says, we're painting at the Gibson Street Gala one time and there was a guy playing Iranian classical music on the piano under the gazebo as it pushed down. It was really quite beautiful. And we had Brother Ali on the show as well, who told an amazing story, because rapping is illegal in Iran, just to rap. But he had a rap song called Uncle Sam Goddamn, which was quite critical of the American government at the time. And little did he know that it was illegal, but he thought it was going to be okay. He was being told to do it. And then it was on public television on all the channels, and he was basically chased out the country. Check that one out if you've not heard that story before. Brother Ali on You Call That Radio.
Wow.
And looking forward to speaking to you tomorrow night, Sapien. The captain says this is one of the best podcasts you've done. Think you should ask John to come on again. So interesting and informative and fucking tastic. Absolutely, John. I could talk to you all day, man. You've there's so many things that we've not even touched on, and we're at nearly 2 hours. So I'm going to let you go soon, man. Did you find that song?
Yeah. If you Google it now, put the band called Barfak, Barfak, and if you put that in and mix the Membranes, you should turn up.
Yes, I've got it. Magic Eye to See the Sky.
Yeah, they did a remix and they made a little video for it in Iran. Yeah, and they make their own music, which is amazing as well. So anybody listening to the show should Google them as well. Look them up, Barfak, and send them a message as well, so they know we're all connected. Because surely the power of pop culture is that we're all joined together somehow. You know, these countries got these crazy regimes, lunatic presidents. The world's run by like a lot of giant babies, but you know, weirdly, the music was we're the grown-ups now, and our culture's all over the world. That's why they're scared of us. You know, we don't mean no harm. You know, if the Iranians want to have, you know, like an austere religious government, let them have one. You know, but just leave the people alone for God's sake. Don't be scared of them. Don't be scared of your own public. God's not going to be scared of Barfak. But Barfak have got a woman singing. It's not going to bring down your regime. Just let them be, you know.
Shout out to 303 Player who did get Barfak in Times Mirror. And Tunnel Mental says, I have a lot of Iranian friends here. They don't all call themselves Iranian due to knee-jerk reactions. They say they're Persian.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because my friends still call themselves Iranian. But I mean, I'm not saying that's not true, because everybody's got different ways of dealing with the situation. I mean, did you see the documentary recently? There's a 2-part documentary on Iran and going back to Persia and going back to the days of the empire.
I seen a YouTube one. It might have been Vice or something. I don't know if it's the same one.
Oh yeah, I've seen that about the bands there. It's amazing. But then you realise why their music is so incredible, because it's incredibly sophisticated culture. The weird thing is that Europe, especially North Europe, or especially this country, actually, we're only recently got to that level of civilization. 2,000 years ago, they were making things that we could only dream of. You know, it's sad to see how they're lagging behind because of these really austere beliefs. You know, you've got to be fluid. You know, you can have your gods, you just keep updating your gods. You know, things shouldn't be 2,000 years old. It doesn't make a difference. You know, I mean, I'm fascinated by spirituality and I'm fascinated by religion. But I'm not actually a religious person. But I believe that everybody can have any belief they want to understand what the world is. But don't impose it on other people. I'm not going to go to Iran and impose my culture on people in Iran. You know, I'll say you can listen to it if you want or understand it, but I don't. You don't have to be it. You know, you can mix it up with your culture and create another culture. This is the power of human creativity. You can take bits and bobs of any old culture that appeal to you, make another culture out of it. And it's, you know, I hate cultural imperialism. I don't think the whole world should be McDonald's, and I don't think the whole world should just be one God. You know, everybody's got a right to their culture, but that includes people in Iran, because some people in Iran don't want the culture that's getting imposed on them by their governments. You know, the government shouldn't be so scared. I don't understand these terrified governments trying to tell people what to think. It just people aren't like that. We're all weird. We're all mad.
I mean, the best progression as a species comes from artists and poets and musicians. And I think if you're going to ban music or art or poetry, well, then they've got a problem. I think poetry's a big thing in Iran, but I think that it's got to fit a certain construct, or it's not allowed. And so that's why Farzane has decided to move to Glasgow, who has happily welcomed her with arms.
Of course, yeah, and it's great. I mean, there's a lot of Iranians in Manchester. The fact a lot of Iranians go to my gym. They do their wrestling there, and I'm proud they've come to my city. And I love having the conversations with them about where they're from. And in fact, my next door neighbours, they're from Iraq, and they're a great family. And I live in a very multicultural part of Manchester, and I get my lift on the block of flats I live in, and I could talk about a different country every day, and it's fantastic. I'm into humanity. I'm proud of my country, and I love my country, and I love. But my version of the country I'm proud of is definitely not the version that Farage pimps out around the world. I think it needs redefining. I think we're a very generous people, and multiculturalism works in Britain because of that. I think Iranian people in Glasgow will love it in Glasgow because Glaswegians are a welcoming people as well. And it's a big city. It's a progressive, modern city, and it doesn't water down your culture having Iranians there. It's just you get Iranian Glaswegians, another twist, another turn on a powerful culture. It's ace.
Actually, Paul's made a good point. He says Iran is a modern construct if you actually think about it. Because if you look at the way things are going, I can see where you're going with that. Because with everything that's happening just now in America and Britain, maybe Iran is ahead of the game once again, but unfortunately this time not in a good way.
Well, it is a modern construct because it was post Shah, wasn't it? So it became a different version. They wanted to get rid of the history, and also they saw it maybe too tied up into a Western version of their history, and that maybe it'll change back at some point to become something else. Maybe they'll go back to Persia. But then we're all modern constructs, aren't we? The United Kingdom is a modern construct, isn't it? Scotland's been part of England, which is probably not for much longer. Whatever people think of that, Paul Ramsey, this is not the case here. But that's only 200 years, isn't it? It's not. It's not 2,000 years like a lot of people in England think. It's just a relatively modern thing. So it's all modern constructs, isn't it? America's a modern construct, isn't it? It's the world's always changing. Maybe it's good to have things that are modern constructs and not be so weighed down by the past. Or maybe there's good things in the past that we should keep and mix them with good things from the future.
303 player says, "Mon the Glaswegians."
Yeah, that's a great term. That's fantastic.
The captain says, "We are one. We only have different opinions." Fact.
It's true, isn't it? And we should respect the opinions, even of people we don't agree with. We respect the right they got an opinion, and they respect the right for us to disagree with it and politely disagree with it. Whatever, people could disagree with me. It doesn't matter. They're welcome to say to me, "I don't agree with what you just said." But when people start getting rude, the conversation's over, isn't it? That's not a debate, is it? It's not an argument, it's a debate, and it's different. Yeah.
Tunnel Mental says it takes great courage to be open-minded in a world that is rapidly shutting people down. I salute the open minds. This is a great interview. We also had Lou23 says, "This has been my favourite show. Could listen to you both talk all night." Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think, and Patrick Murray, the world is here to share and love together. I think that's a good way to. I think that's a good way to end it. Sorry, I'll let you have the final say on that. Let's end it in a positive.
Well, I think that is a positive thing. That's a good way to end it. I think culture is the thing. Culture is the glue that binds us together, but culture is also the thing that blows our minds and opens us up to so much other stuff as well.
Absolutely brilliant, John. Thank you so much. Everyone check out John Robb's interviews on YouTube. There's some amazing stuff on there. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us, and You Call That Radio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
We'll be back tomorrow night. If you're into graffiti art, or even if you're not, you really need to learn more about the Yardworks crew and the amazing work they're doing. And then on Friday, we've got Farzane talking about her incredible journey from Iran to Glasgow Thank you very much, John. We're going to finish with the Membrane's Magic Eye to See the Sky, and it's by the band is called Barak.
Barfak, remixed by Barfak, yeah.
Barfak, sorry.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much, John, and we'll hopefully see everyone back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, and again on Friday at 7 o'clock. Cheers, John.
Okay, thank you.
How do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? How do we do that, given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week? Every country on Earth is trying to figure out how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization. How do we square that circle?
You call that radio?
Makes coherent sense.